Hello and welcome to another video, and again thank you for your comments. You sent me down on a massive deep dive, quantum theory and everything, all about the time slip in Liverpool, Bold Street. The conversations at 2 o'clock in the morning were ridiculous in the comment section, and I just loved it. It is one of those ones where I think I replied in a comment where you could just sit in a pub or sit in your garden in the summer having a drink, just deep diving into all these reasons and explanations about how it could have happened and all these different theories that you were coming up with, and it was just brilliant. And my head was buzzing last night trying to get asleep, thinking about all these time loops and all the stuff that you all suggested. So yeah, I really enjoyed that interaction with you all. You're all brilliant. And again, yeah, so if you do like the videos, do the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and do this hype button, whatever. And yeah, you got the memberships and buy me a coffee and all that, you know, that sort of stuff. Today we are sport for choice. We are looking at a location that has 57 different varieties of ghosts. So we have Coggeshall in Essex, and it's meant to have 57 ghosts that have been reported over 400-500 years. I've picked a few. I went there and I picked a few to go and look into and visit those locations myself. There's some I think I probably now should have gone and had a look at as well, but I'm not going to kick out. I may go back and look at this. Coggeshall history is a long one. Now obviously in this area we've done quite a few in that area recently, even though Kersey isn't far up the road from it. But this is between Colchester and Braintree, and if you know Colchester, you've got the castle. That comes up a little bit in this because of somebody that ended up there, but now haunts this village. But I will say that when you look at the history of this place, it's got so many twists and turns, and some of it is quite dark. In fact, very, very dark, even down to the Coggeshall gang, which we'll cover because we have a ghost from that we're going to be talking about. And I think the best way to cover this video is to pick one location to start off with and focus on that first of all, and then we'll move on through the town. So let's get started. And the first location we are looking at is the White Hart Hotel, or the White Hart Inn. It was a coaching inn to start off with. Now I believe that this was first built in 1425. Now someone may be able to correct me on that. I will say, when I went there the other day, the local people are fantastic. You're going to see one of those in my video later on. They love telling you the history of this place, and they tell me so many new ghost stories. Some I've put in this video, some I'm going to have to go back and do more research on and cover in a later video. But the White Hart pub, I actually knew of the White Hart pub in about 2005, and that comes to me from somebody who had been there. I believe at the time they actually worked there for about 2 years. They come to me about all the ghost stuff that happened to them while they were in there. For all essence, it is a 15th century building. It was actually a larger building, and they've reduced it in size to what it is today. So at the moment, people who go to the White Hart and stay in the White Hart will tell you that the rooms upstairs are really haunted, mainly room 2. This comes into play when we look back at the history of this building. So when I was first informed about these ghosts in this building, the tale that I was told was that this lady was working in the bar of a night time. They had guests upstairs staying. She's clearing up the bar, ready to go home. Now the stairs at the bottom lead to the guest rooms up the top. As she was leaving the building, she glanced around because she heard someone moving on stairs. As she looked up, she see a child standing at the top of those stairs. And thinking that they had guests there, she didn't really take much notice of it. As she turned around to say goodbye to the girl and good night, and the girl disappeared. Now when I say disappeared, her words were, the girl vanished in front of my eyes. This scared the life out of her. The next day she went back in and told the people that she was working there that she thought she'd seen a ghost of this girl standing on the stairs. Some of them laughed, other people turned around and said, yeah, we think we've seen her as well. Now, at the time, in that bar, things used to move around on the countertop, items would go missing, your general sort of ghost story stuff. And I'm aware that people who've done investigations there in the last 10 years all report the same sort of thing. You know, things moving around in the bar area, flashing lights, things falling off the shelves, all that sort of stuff that you normally get in paranormal investigations. Then you get to the really creepy story that I guess probably made this more well known than what it ever had been beforehand. During a period when some work was being carried out at the hotel, we have a workman called Arthur Adams. Arthur Adams is there to line up some masonry brickwork that, where they're changing the building around, they just need to match it up to make sure it all looks perfect. And I guess these are all listed buildings, so there's probably a lot of restrictions and all that. He has actually travelled down from a different part of the country to look after this work that is going on. Arthur Adams is walking around the pub area downstairs. He hears the sound of children playing in the pub. This takes him back a little bit because he thinks the pub is completely empty, and he walks around to see where these children are. The voices get a little bit louder as he enters into the foyer where the stairs are that go upstairs. He hears two sets of footsteps running up those stair treads. He looks up and he catches a shape as somebody flashed around the corner. He walks up the stairs because apparently nobody's meant to be in that hotel at that time. He gets to the top of the stairs, and what he describes is your typical scary ghost image. There's two girls standing at the top of those stairs. Their faces are completely pale. They have no eyes. Where their eyes should be, there are complete holes going through to the back of their skull. And already this is terrifying. He falls back against the wall and slides down the wall. These girls move over and lean over the top of him and start laughing in his face. He scrambles and basically rolls down the stairs to get away from them. He lands at the bottom of the stairs and looks up, and these two girls are gliding down the stairway to him. He picks himself up and flees the hotel. He refuses ever to go back into that building. Just need to put a little bit of a correction here because I'm aware that he is also recorded as Arthur Arnold. So a little bit of confusion there if it's Arthur Adams or Arthur Arnold. So if anyone picks up on that, they go, oh no, you got the name wrong. It could, it's the report that is more important than the particular name of that. But this sets into motion people coming up with explanations of what could be going on in that pub. It turns out that in 1650 there was a fire in that building. Now, if you remember, I said this building was a part of a larger building. This fire was meant to have taken place, and two children died in the rooms upstairs. The main rooms that are said to be affected by this are room 2 and room 19. Now, I'm also aware that the Daily Mirror, things the Mirror or the Mail Mirror, went there and done their own investigation there and stayed in room 19 and said that they were hearing knocking and tapping and those sort of general things that happened to them. But room 2, I'm also aware of a different report of a guest staying in room 2, waking up in the middle of the night, hearing children laughing at them. They sit up in bed because that laughter sounds as if it's actually in their room with them. And they're sitting up in bed and they're looking around and they put the light on and there's nothing in that room. They get out of bed and they're walking around to the door to see if the children are standing outside the door laughing. Again, this is a hotel, so they're thinking there could be other guests there. They've got children and they're playing around outside, even though this is about 2 o'clock in the morning. They open up the door and there's no one there. He turns back round to the bed where his partner is still laying in bed. To the side of her are these two children, the same description, wearing white gowns with short hair with no eyes in their head. This frightens the life out of him. He lets out a loud scream. His partner sits up in bed, bolt right, looks, sees these two children standing there facing them, and is about to scream when these two children lean into her and scream into her face before vanishing. Less dramatic reports of room 2 are that they hear children laughing when they can't find things in their room. So some people will brought up their suitcases or bags and they only pop out and go down to the bar, they come back up and they can't find them in the room. And they hear these children laughing, but they go down to report their items missing, and whoever it is comes back up with them to make sure no one's stolen stuff out of the room and the items are back in the room again. Now apparently this is quite a common occurrence. Old staff there say this happened all the time, that items would go missing in the rooms or in the bar and then would get replaced. But during that period of time, children could be heard laughing in that building. The other ghost we have in there is a grey-haired man that is seen walking up all the flights of the stairs to where the rooms are. We have a cleaner that is in there and they are cleaning the carpets when they look up and see this figure of this man walking up the stairs. They just think it's a guest. They carry on cleaning and they've been there about another 40 minutes and they get to the next level, and as they get to the next level they see this figure of this man again walking up the next flight of stairs. I think that's a bit weird. No, he hasn't come past me, he hasn't gone down, so where has he been during that period of time that I was cleaning that floor and now he's up there? Out of curiosity, the cleaner turns around and walks up those stairs. When she gets to the top, she describes this man in a long coaching jacket with long grey hair and a grey beard. He's standing in the corner by the doors of the room. Now in my video I walk up these stairs. That's a very tight space. She must have come face to face with that gentleman. What she says, this gentleman doesn't react as if she's there, but puts his hands out and starts walking back down the stairs and passes right away through her. Okay, so the next ghost we're going to look at is that of Thomas Hawkes. Now Thomas Hawkes was burnt at the stake. I'm going to let the lady I met there explain a little bit about him and about the building and the ghostly events that she experiences living in that house where he lived. What I'm going to say, I'm just going to read this bit out first, so I'm going to show you some photos and that while I'll read this, because otherwise I've got to whack my glasses on and I look like an idiot. But I'm going to read this to you and then I'm going to play the clip of what the lady says. Thomas Hawkes was burnt to death in 1555. The Catholic Church requested him to turn to their faith. Responding to this criticism, he reported to have said, "No, my lord, that I will not. For if I had 100 bodies, I would suffer them all to be torn to pieces rather than to adjure and recant." As he burned, Thomas Hawkes threw his hands up and clapped them 3 times, a sign to his friends that his pain could be endured. Hawkes' death and circumstances leading up to this recording the details of John Fox's book, The Book of Martyrs. So, first of all, I've just met you. Just called you, and you just told me something about the house over the road with the roof.
Exactly.
Yeah, go on then.
So, this building here, the roof, the red roof that you can see, and everything kind of around that was called Constantines. It used to be one house, and we've got a blue plaque because Thomas someone that you can go and look at the blue pack. He used to live there and he was burnt at the stake.
Right.
And my understanding is that he was burnt at the stake because he was hiding Christian children in the roof where I live now during the Reformation.
So you live up the top part?
I live up the top, yeah. So this was an old house that's been converted into 4 flats, and then a couple of commercial properties. So basically I've got the roof, it has got windows on the other side and more rooms the other side. Yeah. But allegedly Thomas Hawkes, that was his name, used to hide people, children mainly, in the attic to stop them being baptised as Catholics during the Reformation, and he was burnt at the stake. But in terms of my experience here, they feel like really friendly, like comforting spirits. But when I first moved in, more so than now, you'd constantly hear footsteps going up the stairs. So as you open my front door, there's stairs right away, you'd hear footsteps coming up the stairs. And there was once I was working in my office and I saw something out of the corner of my eye and thought it was my partner getting home early. The pets were going mad. I saw like a shadow and heard noises, but there was nobody there. And then I think the main one was my partner was out of the window, and as he turned around and I kind of walked towards him, we both saw a figure in like a green cloak with a hood.
Right.
And in the basement under here,
it's got basement
it's called
as well.
the witches' basement, where allegedly
Right.
they used to keep the witches before they took them down to the river to drown them.
That's absolutely brilliant.
I think that's all.
So yeah, that was lovely meeting that lady. And I say, she did make me laugh. And what a fantastic building. I've gone away and I've done a little bit of research on building and with Thomas Hawkes. And I say, he's mainly seen as the ghost of Colchester Castle, where he's meant to haunt the old prisons there. But doing this dive and deep diving into this, his ghost used to often be seen in that village. Now, it wasn't long after he had been burnt at the stake that his friends started to report that they see Thomas walking through that village of a night time, which is rather bizarre, being they actually watched him burn to death on the stake. Now, there's another detail that she brought up in that video, and that's about the witches. And first of all, I was like, yeah, I do know the witch's story of this place, but I couldn't pinpoint the house where this witch was meant to have lived or anything like that. And then first of all, I didn't want to correct the lady when she was talking, because originally I was going to turn around and say, well, actually, I believe the witch from that location was taken to Chelmsford and treated and tried at Chelmsford. Then I learned that that was incorrect, and the chances were that she was kept in the cellar of her building. And the story of this witch is quite traumatic and terrifying. But to explain the ghost of this witch, we have to look at a little bit of the history of the area, and we go back to Matthew Hopkins. Obviously, you can go back to my video of Matthew Hopkins, but he lived locally, and during that period of time, the witch trials, now we're actually looking at a bigger period of time, so over from 1547 to around about 1650, there's like 740 people accused of witchcraft in that area. Now, before Matthew Hopkins got involved, Coggeshall had its own witch trials going on. They had 13 witch trials themselves in that town, and some of the names are 1567 Alice Attram, 1588 George Haven, 1590 John Bradley, 1590 Thomas Browing, 1590 Goodwife Browing, 1590 Thomas Browings. Blimey, they really went for them, didn't they? 1519 Margaret Foster, 1590 George Haven, 1590 Goodwife Leonard, 1590 John Wade, 1590 Goodwife Wade, 1595 Rose Moore, 1607 Anne Harvey. 1590 was a bad year for witches, weren't it? But in short, in 1699, the priest of the area was called into the centre of the town to question a lady who is believed to be a witch. Now, the accusation came over that she was heard wishing somebody called Mr. Cox to become lame. And within a few days, Mr. Cox became lame. Now, apparently, they'd had arguments before and they did not get on. So, being that so many people in that town's history have been accused of witchcraft before, I guess the easy way to get rid of her was to accuse her of being a witch. The priest came down to ask her these questions, and she gave over to the faith and said that she believed in God Almighty and all this sort of stuff. But for the townspeople, that wasn't enough. They subjected this widow to horrifying tests. They were all following the guide of Discovery of Witches written by Matthew Hopkins. So all the tests that he put in there, they were doing this lady. That was included being swum. That was where they put you on the end of a rope, drop you into the river, and see if you swim or drown. And she kept floating. Apparently, she floated like a cork. And they'd done this 3 times to her. Not only that Mr. Cox believed that if he took the blood of her and burned it, it would save the curse. The curse would go away and he wouldn't be lame anymore. So he attacked her and ripped into her arms, put his handkerchief on it, soaked up the blood on the handkerchief, went back and burnt it over a candle, and he said it stunk. But his curse never went away and he was still lame. Now, this poor lady had continuously been dumped into the river. Now, during that period of time, I do believe that she was kept in the cellar of that house. Unfortunately, after being dumped into that river, she actually became very, very ill and soon died. She's meant to haunt that river along that area and the footbridge that goes across it. Other people say that she is one of the grey ladies that is seen walking through the town right by where you got the clock tower now. This is a Jubilee tower, and walks over to the house that was Thomas Hawke's. So we have a situation there that it is quite nasty, but history backs up these reports. Now, I will say that there is another report that I can link into this witch one. There was an American air base just north of the village, and 2 American airmen come into the village and they go to the pub. They're sitting in the pub having a drink and meeting all local people, chatting up the local women. They leave and they walk over the bridge. As they're walking over the bridge, they hear a splash in the river. They go down because they think somebody has fallen in, and they see a lady struggling to breathe in the water. One of the gentlemen jumps in and drags her over towards the bank. His friend runs down, and together they manage to get her out of the river and lay her on the side. As she's laying there, she starts laughing and then disappears. Could this be the ghost of the witch that was continuously dunked into that river? As you walk through the streets of Coggeshall, there are many reports of individual ghosts that haunt different houses along the area. But the main street itself that runs up to the town, not Church Road, the other road, there is said to be a coach that runs down that road. Now, this coach is said to be part of a gang. Now, this is the Coggeshall gang. Now, the Coggeshall gang were a nasty group of men that were just robbing all over the place, all over Essex. And their main hideout and their sort of gang headquarters was the Black Horse Inn. Now, you see this is like the pinkish house in this video now, and I'm going to stick some more photos in it. Samuel Crowe is the ringleader of that gang, and one of the gang members got caught and went to prison, and he tried to convince him not to give evidence, and the guy gave evidence anyway, and they all get rounded up and eventually get caught. Samuel Crowe escapes, and he's hiding out in the Black Horse Inn. He's in the upper floors. The King's men come in, burst through the doors, chase after him. As they get to the top, Samuel Crowe is standing on the ledge of the window. He manages to jump across all the roofs of the houses along that street and makes the escape. If you look at the building next to it, I do walk down the side of this, his ghost is meant to be seen walking up that alleyway, but he stops at a certain point. Now, the reason he stops at a certain point is that you'll see today there's a gap there, but before then that building used to come out on the side more and you wouldn't have been able to walk up to that. So again, this is something that backs up reality. He would not be able to walk straight out onto the street because there's a part of that building there. Other people say in the autumn they hear somebody running across the rooftops of that street. The next one we have is the Church of St Peter and the Woolpack, and I'm actually joining them both into one story here. This is the story of the Grey Lady. Now, the Grey Lady is often seen walking from the Church of St Peter over to the Woolpack. She's always meant to haunt the Woolpack Inn itself, so people have seen her walking around the corridors of that pub and around the outside of it. The story I'm interested in is one that happened in 1962. Keep in mind that this church was actually bombed badly by the Germans in World War II, and over a period of years it was being restored. And now you can't really tell what's the old part and what's the new part. Done a really good job. But in 1962 we have an elderly couple walking along the outside of that church. Just going to say that sometimes you come across a ghost story that you pictured it happening in your head and you see a funny side of it and it doesn't really match up with the story, but your own imagination sort of runs over you. So what happens in this story? And I've got to keep a straight face now because the thought of it is better than the story. The couple are walking around the church. Now this is early evening, so the light is going down. 1962, pretty dull lights and all that. Saying that, the street lighting in the area is not great anyway. It all keeps in character. You know, if there's a time slip story of Coggeshall, I'd believe it, because if you just turned up in there, you'd probably think you was back in medieval times or Tudor times anyway. But this couple are walking around the church. They see this lady wearing a grey dress. They believe it's their neighbour. The husband thinks he's going to play a joke. He splits off and gets to the bottom of the path before the lady gets there. His wife is walking behind the lady. The husband jumps out of the water at the bottom, only to see this lady is almost transparent, and it frightens the life out of him. He collapses on the floor. The wife runs down, but the lady is still standing now. Now, to his wife's perspective, she says that he jumps out, see the lady, and fell straight on the floor, but the lady was a solid figure, so she sees something different to what he sees. She runs up. She's calling after her neighbour, who is the grey lady. This grey lady just carries on walking straight through her husband laying on the floor and disappears over towards the Woolpack. I think it's the first time I've ever heard of somebody trying to do a practical joke on a ghost. But this is a really old ghost story, 1962. And there's no reason for them to make it up. You wouldn't admit to doing something like that. But they went to the priest, told the priest, and the priest found it funny. The people in the Woolpack found it funny. And it went down to a little bit of their own folklore. Some of the details may have been changed and twisted over the years. But just the vision of it in my head, I've not done a very good job telling it. But it's because I just kept laughing. Just had to keep stopping it. Yeah, I just think it was a brilliant story. Okay, so now we get to the clock tower in the village centre. Now this was 1887 and it was for Queen Victoria's Jubilee. Over the years it's been a cherished landmark for that village. But it isn't without its own ghost stories. People who have worked there turn around and say that there's a shadowy figure that moves around the building. Items will lift up off the table and float around on its own. Things would often go missing within that building. I did see a video of a lady about 3 years ago talking to somebody about their own experiences within that building. So I know the people that are there have experiences to back up this sort of information. But again, the story that I have is of 2 American airmen. Now I'm assuming these are different American airmen, but that town was quite popular with the American airmen being so local. They've been down, they've been one of the local pubs in the town. They're leaving and they're walking up the street. See this beautiful lady walking across the road. This is from a building that we're going to cover next. They call out to this lady and try to flirt with her, and she's paying no attention. They're getting closer to her, and then they witness her pass through the door of that clock tower without opening the door. This leaves the 2 American airmen dumbfounded. Now the building that she come from has its own ghost stories. Now the building next to the Black Horse Inn on the other side is now the brasserie, and people who use that place and the staff in that place have had some very haunting experiences of things moving around, lights flashing, things not working, electrical items just stopping and then working again. But there is this report going back over the last 40 years of this lady being seen walking out of that building and disappearing going across the road. This falls in line with what the American airmen saw. Now, looking back at it, this is all those houses in one little row where you've got the Black Horse Inn and the houses that Samuel Crowe jumps over to get away. So you have a little hotspot there of these ghosts. So you've got Samuel Crowe and this lady coming out of that building. Could they all be linked? Could this be a partner of Samuel's that is hunting for him, trying to find him in the afterlife or something like that? I know the stuff in that building are still identifying weird events going on and things just going missing and turning up, all that sort of haunted building stuff. I know this video is going to get on. I'm trying to get as short as possible. So we're going to go to the next story and we're going back to monks. Okay, I hope you appreciate what I'm trying to do in this video is not cover all 57 ghosts. I'm trying to cover a select few. And this is the place that creeped me out the most. Mainly because I went down there on my own. It was dark. I got creeped out. A fox ran out, frightened the life out of me. And I was a coward, okay? But this location did scare me. And I'll be honest about that. We are talking about Coggeshall Abbey. And this is the old abbey ruins. So the whole estate was all the big abbey and where the monks used to live, all the cloisters. And obviously, after all the monasteries were all knocked down, there were still parts of this abbey that were left. The main church was gone. This abbey dates back to 1140. And obviously, there was a lot of monks in there at that time. And monks haunt this place today. Now, the reports I have are of Abbey Lane. As you see in this video, I'm bravely driving down Abbey Lane in my car with the doors locked and going at quite a pace, so I'm going to slow it down so it looks like I'm going a little bit slower and being braver. People have said they've been driving down that lane and they see a monk walk across that road. Other people say that when it's misty and foggy and they're walking their dogs down that lane, they see monks walk out of the mist and evaporate before they get to them. There is a point along this lane where there's a field. Now in this field is said to be where the monks used to keep their sheep. And I bravely got out of the car and filmed this field. The report goes that people of an eye time hear sheep bleating in that field. And when they look over, they see two monks with crooks walking across that land. Now, being brave, I got out and looked. I'm staring over the fence. I just turn the film off, and a fox runs out of the bush next to my leg and scares the life out of me. It was terrifying. But as you carry on down the lane, you get to the ruins of the farm, or the rest of the abbey. And it's been incorporated into farm buildings now. But the reports around the area are quite creepy. And that is of lights appearing in windows when nobody's in them. The figure of a monk walking down the stairs next to one of the buildings where actually there's no stairs there. Other people turn around and say that they get strange smells of food cooking along that road when they're walking down now. I know some of this has been restored and parts of it has been taken over and people live there. On that night I went there, it was dead quiet, nobody around at all. I was going to walk around the site itself. To be truthful, I didn't have a torch. That's my excuse. But I'm going back to 1990. We have two local kids that are just messing about in the area, and it's coming up to Halloween. And they want to spook themselves. The Abbey is quite a creepy place to go down, and the ruins are a great place to explore as kids. They're over the backyard of the Abbey. They're just walking around and just looking to see what was there. When they start hearing a voice in the distance, first of all they're thinking they're going to get caught. So they hide at the back of one of the barns. Now these are all brick old barns and they do look rather creepy anyway. But the voice doesn't get any closer. So they think they're safe. They walk out from behind the barn and start walking along the side of it. That is when they turn around and say they see two glowing figures of men walking towards them. Now first of all they think they've just got torches on and they're coming to catch them. They turn and they're going to run, when one of them holds the other one's arm and pulls him back, and he turns around and says, "Look." His friend turns around and looks at these two figures. They're floating above the ground. As they're walking along, their feet are not touching the floor. Then it becomes very, very clear that these are monks with their hoods down. And they're just walking along as if nothing was different, nothing was strange, and they just watch these two monks walk across the ground, turn and enter into the ruins of the barn. The two boys are actually petrified. They run home and they're acting a bit strange, and their parents are going, "You okay? You okay?" They don't say anything. A few days go past, and one of them is not taking it too well, and he doesn't go to school. He tells his parent what has happened. The parent takes it seriously, contacts the parents of the other boy, and they sit down and they talk to them. Now the two dads thinking, "No, okay, maybe these weren't ghosts. Maybe there's two blokes up this place and no, we can go and have a look." The two dads go up to this farm, and this is quite late at night. They're walking around and they hear these voices. They start hearing the sound of monks chanting. Now they know there's no monks on that land at all. Without a second thought, the parents get back in the car and drive back home. And for me, I think that is the perfect ending to that story, because it's what I'll do. I'm not a coward. Bit. Right, I'm going to end this video here. I'll let you into the secret. I don't know how much this video has actually come out. I've got a problem with my microphone. The last video I've done on Liverpool, I had to cut loads of it out. The sound just kept breaking up, and yeah, so I hope you enjoy this one. It's a bit different. It's a lovely place. Please go and visit this area. Support your local historic sites. It's lovely. The people there are the nicest people I've ever met, and this video could be 10 hours long. They all told me so many stories. They've all told me so many stories. I may have to do another video on it, because it's just a fantastic location. Look after yourselves. Like the video, subscribe, put the notifications on, do the hype video, and take care. I'll see you next one. Bye.